island. It's so scary. But yeah, as Josie mentioned, I'm an immigrant myself. I actually moved to Toronto 2 years ago. Yeah. So they call me a newcomer. That's the term you use here in Canada, right? That's why I knew Canadians were too polite. But they just used to call us Fox. You know? Yeah. But newcomer has a nice ring to it. I like it. Yeah, I moved here from Trinidad and Tobago. You guys know where that is? Yeah, you guys moved to Scarborough. I love that. Yeah, if you don't know what Trinidad and Tobago is, it's the last set of islands at the end of the archipelago, right off the coast of Venezuela. Yeah, and I know what a few of you are wondering. If she's from the Caribbean, why is she Chinese? You know, people have a very particular perception of what it means to be and look like a Caribbean person, right? I was born and raised and educated in Trinidad. I lived there most of my life, but both of my parents are Chinese immigrants, so I specifically identify as traumatized. But also Chinese-Trinidadian, yeah. My parents, you know, they moved all the way from China to Trinidad and they had me. And so I come here today as a child of immigrants, turned immigrant myself. I've been grieving a lot, you know, these past 2 years. Canada and Trinidad are very different places. You know, winter is so bad, apparently it makes people monogamous. It's called cuffing season, we call it here. Yeah, weather's not great, and Canadians can be really racist sometimes. But I mean, it makes sense, right? It's a country built on racism. You guys see the comments online sometimes? Yeah, you see them. I was like, oh, I miss the old Canada. I miss how my country used to be. What old Canada, Karen? The Canada before your ancestors came here and tried to get rid of the people who were here before? You know? I just came here way later, you know? It's okay, it's okay. So, yeah, I moved here exactly 2 years and 3 months ago, September 2022. And then last September 2023, my parents decided to move back to China. Yeah. They sold our family home and they decided to come visit us here in Toronto. My sister and I both came up together on their way back to China, trying to resettle into a life after living in Trinidad for over 30 years. Yeah. I decided to pick up my parents from, you know, the airport like a good, you know, daughter. And the first thing my mom tells me is, Lily, you look like you've been lifting a lot of weights and eating a lot of food. Which is really a Chinese mother's way of saying, you're fat. You know? But honestly, all I heard was, you're swole. I've been in the gym and eating food, you know? Sometimes you have to just believe what you want to hear to cope. It was a really lovely 2 weeks. We stayed for 2 weeks with my sister and I in a really small 2-bedroom apartment. We saw a lot of things, we ate different things. And then they moved to China. It was crazy, to be honest. And then 2 months after they moved, my dad got really, really sick. Yeah. So this time last year, December 2023, I was actually in Hong Kong visiting my dad. He had a really severe case of pneumonia, so they put him in an induced coma. He couldn't speak, they put a ventilator through his neck. And so the last time I saw my dad was actually Christmas Day of last year. Yeah. It was the last time I saw him alive, at least, you know? And it's been a strange time since then, since April of this year, you know, dealing with the complexity of who he was and the ways that he affected different people. Do you guys believe in the afterlife? Me myself, you know, I have kind of, you know, I'm kind of on the fence about it. For the most part, I think, you know, once you die, you get buried, and maybe a tree grows wherever you're buried. You become part of the earth again, you know. Because if I have to believe in the concept of heaven and hell, I have to accept that my dad is definitely in hell. I love that some people laugh. That joke has mixed reaction. Alright, hear me out, you know? My parents were very traditional, but very progressive at the same time, you know? Progressive enough to have moved from China to Trinidad, progressive enough to have kept me even though I'm a girl. But also very traditionally Chinese, you know, they still held on to their Chinese traditions. So I don't know if they would have been more upset if I brought home a woman or a Japanese person. Yeah. You see how my dad is at home? Homophobic, racist. But also, you know, carrying a lot of intergenerational trauma. You guys seen Kim's Convenience? Yeah, 1910, Japan attacked Korea. Yeah, a lot of our parents and grandparents were really carrying that, and my dad was one of them. Growing up, you know, my dad was a real tyrant, if I have to be honest. You know, he had that kind of toxic masculinity that could only come from people who grew up really poor, really unwell, and probably raised by people who are similarly really poor and really unwell. You know, I think what the hardest part of growing up with my dad was seeing how he disrespected my mother so much. You know, bringing over a woman, separating her from the rest of her family, and basically trying to control her. You know. And at the same time, I have so many joyful memories of my dad. Like, I think I am a stand-up comedian today because of my dad. Because he was always cracking jokes growing up and he was funny, you know? I have this distinct memory of when I was 8 years old. We were in a car, driving to Port of Spain, and the sun was beating down on us through the windshield. And I'm like, Dad, can we get tint? Can we get tint for the car? And he looks at me and he's like, Louie, tint is for couples. And smiled and turned away. Tint is for couples, Lily. He was that kind of person, you know? So when I moved to Canada, I started working in the nonprofit sector, and I've had the privilege and opportunity to really interact with a lot of Indigenous people through my work. And one of the things that I've learned and really held on to is holding two truths at once, which was aptly, you know, described by the scene before my set. And this has really helped, you know, stayed with me because I've had to learn to accept that my dad was many things to many different people, you know? And different people are going to grieve my dad in different ways and remember him in different ways. So for some people, like my sister, my dad was their abuser, you know? And then for other people, my dad was a very powerful force. He was always helping people in our community, always helping other Chinese immigrants, and people really remember him fondly. So it's okay to remember your dead parents in different types of ways. And sometimes that means telling jokes about them. So thank you so much for holding space for me today.